Questions on answer to an urgent question asked in the House of Commons yesterday on the security and human rights implications of Article 23 in Hong Kong.
My Lords, yesterday Andrew Mitchell said the legislation is a breach of the Sino-British Joint Declaration, adding that the United Kingdom decided in 2021 that China was in ongoing breach of that agreement and declaration. And of course, earlier this week, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, said there were serious concerns raised about the incompatibility of many of its provisions with international human rights law. So can the Noble Lord, the Minister, tell us what we are doing at the United Nations to support the UN High Commissioner on these points, and also to raise these serious breaches of the joint declaration? Can I also ask about the ongoing detention of Jimmy Lai, a British citizen who is a stark symbol of the decline of Hong Kong's freedoms? What update can he give us give the House in relation to our efforts to secure Jimmy Lai's release?
First, I can confirm to the Noble Lord that after a series of breaches by China, including the imposition of the national security law and the changes to Hong Kong's electoral system, the UK did declare China to be in a state of ongoing non-compliance with the declaration in March 2021. This new safeguarding bill, as the High Commissioner of Human Rights says, may not uphold those obligations which are bound to it within international human rights laws. It falls short of international standards that Hong Kong itself has promised to uphold. And the issue of the agreement that we ourselves signed with China, the joint declaration, this is a legally binding international agreement registered with the UN. So I assure the Noble Lord we will continue, and have done, as my noble friend the Foreign Secretary did on the announcement. This legislation will come into effect over this weekend, so we will look quite in a focused way on this, but my noble friend has commented quite strongly in this respect. On Jimmy Lai, we continue to raise the case consistently. The Foreign Secretary reiterated his call for his release on the 16th of February directly with Foreign Minister Wang Yi at the Munich Security Conference. On the 23rd of January, the UK's permanent representative to the UN also called China to cease his prosecution and to repeal the 45th National Security Law during the Universal Periodic Review. And I myself, on the 28th of February, again called for the immediate release of Jimmy Lai at the UN Human Rights Council.
In spite of the UK, in spite of what the Minister said, in the UK saying that there's ongoing breach, the first time that there was a Minister of His Majesty's government that visited Hong Kong, it was the Investment Minister, Lord Johnson, who did not raise Jimmy Lai with Hong Kong officials, Chinese officials, did not raise human rights with officials, did not raise the sanctioning of democracies, and the Minister did not meet democracy campaigners in Hong Kong. The Minister only made one media comment saying that the British government was concerned about human rights. And the Foreign Secretary's comments this week, today, was saying that he was concerned that this would impact on investment. Is the UK so dependent on Chinese imports of goods and Hong Kong investment that we will not act when it comes to enforcing what we believe should be human rights breaches? Why do ministers visit Hong Kong and do not raise these issues with Chinese officials?
Well, as the Noble Lord himself mentioned, the visit of the last minister, he did, according to our records, raise the issue of human rights, and that's a consistent policy. I, as the Minister for Human Rights, ensure that in briefings, wherever they may be, whatever minister, that those are included within it. I don't agree with him. I think we have consistently, as I have demonstrated in the response to Lord Collins, Noble Lord Collins, raised this issue of Jimmy Lai specifically, and on the issue of not acting, well, we have. When it's come to broader issues on human rights, for example, the Noble Lord will be aware on Xinjiang. The United Kingdom's been instrumental and has led action, both at the UN Human Rights Council as well as the UN in New York.
My Lords, I declare a non-financial interest as a patron of Hong Kong Watch. My Lords, in addition to the case of Jimmy Lai, at a meeting of your party parliamentary group on Hong Kong only yesterday morning, we heard from a young man who had been tortured, who had suffered violence, who had been brainwashed before he was able to escape, and is now in the United Kingdom with many of the others who have come here under the government's commendable BNO scheme. That young man raised the issue of transnational crimes as well as the breach of the basic law and the experience that some are already having in the UK as a result of Chinese operations in Great Britain. What is the government going to do about this? And raising, along with the case of Jimmy Lai, the 1,700 political prisoners who are still in jail in Hong Kong, and yet, as the noble Lord Purvis has just said, we're more interested in building trade relationships to try and address the £50 billion trade deficit with the People's Republic of China, instead of doing something to make them honour these things. Now, secondly, I'd like to ask the noble Lord as well about something that the Right Honourable Member for Chingford, Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, raised only yesterday in the House of Commons on this question, when he asked about a document that has been circulating from the Foreign Office which said that sanctions have been suspended indefinitely in the case of Hong Kong and China. My Lords, is that true, and will the government please publish it? Because after all, not a single person has been sanctioned in Hong Kong by the UK, while the United States has sanctioned 47.
Yeah. My Lords, may I answer the second question first, because it is very important, and I give the noble Lord the assurance that's incorrect. The FCDO has never ruled out sanctions, designations on any individual or entity, and this was something I confirmed before coming here. I'm aware, I followed the debate in the other place, and the strength, and may I also commend the noble Lord. He himself has to suffer directly as a result of sanctions that have been imposed on the noble Lord. And we recognise this, both in terms of, I hope he recognises the support the UK government gives. But I say again very clearly that the FCDO hasn't, and we continue to review designations on individuals and entities. I, of course, can't go into what we may do in the future, but I want to give that reassurance to the noble Lord. On the issue of prioritising trade over human rights, I think the noble Lord recognises, as was said in our integrated review, we do recognise China has an important role when it comes to key partnerships on areas such as ensuring, as our response did on COVID, on looking at issues of climate change, and even in areas of AI, that we actually look to see how we can work together constructively. But we're very clear in our approach, and as was demonstrated in my earlier answer, when my noble friend, the Foreign Secretary, met with the Foreign Minister of China, we made very clear both the case of Jimmy Lai and the issue of human rights was a key area of discussion between them.
My Lord, the noble Lord Alton mentioned the fact that 47 individuals in Hong Kong, I think, if I remember the correct phrase, have been sanctioned by the US government. Given that, what coordination does the my noble friend's department and the government have with other governments around the world to make sure that they are targeting the same people, and so that where they are sanctioned by a liberal democracy in another country, that we do the same, or we have very good reasons for why we don't follow suit?
My Lords, I can assure my noble friend that we do coordinate on sanctions across the piece with all our key partners, as we've said, on a number of occasions with relation to other countries and other regions and other situations. And we do so also work very closely with the United States on China. Of course, their application of sanctions is different to ours, but I can go no further to say that we, of course, have not stopped or paused any of this, and where we see egregious abuse of human rights, where we see there is legitimate reason in a robust way, those names and entities are tested, and we will bring forward sanctions at the appropriate time.
A moment before we leave this question, can I go back to something I asked the noble Lord the Minister just a week ago about the way in which we go about sanctions? It's an opaque and random process, and as the noble Lord has just said to us, we should be doing this in coordination with others. A genocide has been declared in Xinjiang. Who have we brought to justice? What sanctions have we imposed in those circumstances? There are daily threats to Taiwan, and we've also seen extraordinary cruelty and barbarism in Tibet, along with anybody who is a political or a religious dissident being imprisoned, and yes, 7 members of both houses of our parliament sanctioned by the PRC. Why does the government place trade as a higher priority than speaking out in favour of the rule of law, democracy and human rights?
Lords, I've already part answered that question. We regard human rights as a key part of our foreign policy, and on the issue of Xinjiang, we have taken quite direct action against the Chinese authorities, which the Noble Lord is aware of, and we will continue to review the appalling situation, particularly of the Uyghurs, which I know the Noble Lord is very much seized of in Xinjiang, and we'll continue to update the House accordingly.